Hi everyone and welcome back to part 3 of the Cold War series. In the previous part we discussed some nature and characteristics of Cold War, and in this part we'll be studying the background, the alliance system, the historical origins of the Cold War, and that what sort of international conflicts basically led to the increase of tensions between the two superpowers of that age. One was the US and the other was USSR. US was with the capitalist ideology and USSR was with the communist ideology. So let's begin. So, the historical overview, the origins of the Cold War towards a bipolar world and a missed opportunity for peace. Basically, the Second World War completely changed the fate of the world, both in terms of human and material as well, because that was the heaviest which the mankind had ever known, because Europe got into its onto its knees and it was all in ruins. क्योंकि factories they were damaged, transport links जो थे they were damaged and cut off and they were destroyed just because of the two main conferences जो मैंने पहले वीडियो में अपने बताया था. One was the Yalta conference and the other was the Potsdam conference, which set out the major guidelines for the post-war, and that structured the international politics, because as the world was going towards a bipolarity, it soon created a climate of mistrust due to the competing ideologies and increasing divergent views. तो ये इस तरह था कि मतलब peace was unable to meet. So this was the situation which the international politics and the world was going through. So the US and the Western Bloc. Now, from 1947, the Western powers were increasingly concerned at the advance of the communism, because USSR, मैंने आपको पहले भी बताया था, it was concerned with the spreading of its own ideology, the communist ideology. It wanted to spread in the whole Europe. So, in order to combat this communist ideology of the USSR, the US had two plans for that. One was the Truman Doctrine, and the other was the Marshall Plan. Now, the Marshall, he was a U.S. Foreign Minister, George Marshall. He made a plan and that plan was also known as Marshall Plan. So, इस plan में था the restructuring of the European countries. ठीक है, इसको यूरोप को दोबारा structure किया जाएगा because the damage it caused to the European nations. तो World War II के बाद ये एक प्लान था, मार्शल प्लान, दैट इट वुड रीस्ट्रक्चर European countries. And the Truman Doctrine was given by US President Sir Harry Truman to support other nations against communism, that those European nations having the capitalist ideology and they are under the US influence would be supported against communism, के USSR उनको invade ना कर ले और इस तरह मतलब ये सब. So the US and the USSR and the Eastern Bloc, the USSR was basically keeping a close control over the Western Communist Party. अब ईस्टर्न पार्ट में तो यूरोप के ईस्टर्न पार्ट में तो पहले से ही यूएसएसआर की कंट्रोल था, लेकिन इट वांटेड टू एक्सपैंड इट्स कंट्रोल ओवर द वेस्टर्न कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी. अब जो वेस्टर्न में थे, एक क्यूबा था स्टेट, तो उसके अंदर भी स्प्रेड करना चाहता था, एंड अदर स्टेट्स जो कि फ्रांस के करीब है लाइक पोलैंड, एंड देन उधर से थोड़ा सा दूर यूगोस्लाविया, बल्गारिया, रोमानिया, हंगरी एंड चेकोस्लोवाकिया, इटली ऑल्सो एंड फ्रांस. So the USSR wanted to have control over the Western Communist parties as well. So these were the states which I have stated before that they gathered near Warsaw Pact, और फिर ये अलायंस सिस्टम इस तरह यूएसएसआर का स्प्रेड हुआ था. सो द डिवीजन ऑफ जर्मनी को तो डिवाइड कर लिया था ना, एंड देयर वाज अ बर्लिन ब्लॉकेड एज वेल, बिकॉज बर्लिन जो है ना, दैट्स द कैपिटल सिटी ऑफ जर्मनी. सो इट वाज आल्सो डिवाइडेड इनटू 4 ऑक्यूपाइड जोन्स. तो जो स्टालिन थे ना, सोवियत प्रीमियर, ही इम्पोज्ड अ बर्लिन ब्लॉकेड. सो स्टालिन imposed a Berlin blockade on the eastern part of Berlin to avoid the interference of Western Western Bloc, mainly that of USA, because USSR was feeling threatened, वो insecure हो रहा था, because USA was also a superpower at that time. So the strengthening of the alliance system, both the Eastern and the Western blocs were concerned with the strengthening their alliance system to spread their ideology and system of government. ठीक है. So there's this other topic, like from peaceful coexistence to the paroxysms of the Cold War from 1953 to 1962. The first confrontation, which was the time period when the Cold War reached its first climax, that was of the bloody ideological conflict and battleground, because that was the time when North Korea invaded the South Korea. अब North Korea में communist regime था, and South Korea में it was under the US influence. ठीक है. ग्रीस में भी सिविल वॉर चल रही थी, चाइना में भी रेवोल्यूशन आया था, बिकॉज द चाइना जो था ना, इट वांटेड टू जॉइन फोर्सेस विद द यूएसएसआर, एंड लेटर देन आफ्टर द रेवोल्यूशन इट बिकेम अ कम्युनिस्ट regime as well. But we'll discuss the Korean War a little bit, that North Korea was enjoying diplomatic support of the Soviet Union. ठीक है, मैंने आपको पहले भी बताया कि नॉर्थ कोरिया में यूएसएसआर की आइडियोलॉजी थी. ठीक है, इट वाज अ कम्युनिस्ट regime. So it was receiving military aid from the communist China as well. फिर जो थे यूएस के जनरल थे, एक डॉगलस मैक आर्थर, ही कंसल्टेड द यूएस प्रेसिडेंट हैरी ट्रूमैन टू ड्रॉप एन एटॉमिक बॉम्ब ऑन चाइना, बट इट वाज देन दैट ट्रूमैन रिफ्यूज्ड, एंड यूएस वाज आल्सो ऑफरिंग substantial aid to the South Korea. So after then the death of Stalin, who was Soviet premier, there was a conciliatory attitude from the West, and then by the mids of 1950, East and West relations had certainly evolved, and they were characterized by peaceful coexistence. So the Cold War was not over, but we can say that ideological tensions between the two blocs still prevailed, because later देयर वॉज ऑल्सो द क्यूबन मिज़ाइल क्राइसिस, क्योंकि क्यूबा में जो था ना उस टाइम एक प्रो कम्युनिस्ट लीडर था. ठीक है, हु वांटेड मोर क्लोजर, हु वांटेड टू बी मोर क्लोजर टुवर्ड्स द यूएसएसआर, बट यूएस वाज द मेजर स्टम्बलिंग ब्लॉक, क्योंकि वो क्यूबा को नहीं चाहता था कि क्यूबा में एक कम्युनिस्ट रिजीम आए. So tension between the US and USSR increased. So that was the time when USSR and US began building and प्लेसिंग स्ट्रेटिजिक मिसाइल्स. तो यूएसए ने क्या किया था कि टर्की और इटली में अपने न्यूक्लियर वेपन को और मिसाइल्स को रखा था, और यूएसएसआर ने क्यूबा में ही अपने न्यूक्लियर एटॉमिक बॉम्ब और इन सब चीज़ों को रखा था. So through some there was difficulty, but later then through awkward negotiation, the US and the Soviet then worked out for the arrangements, and later this the same period USSR then removed their missiles from Cuba, and similarly the US also promised that it would not invade Cuba. So this was all about the Cuban Missile Crisis, which is an important aspect to study about the Cold War time period. So the Cold War alliance system from 1945 to 1990. अब जो ये वेस्टर्न ब्लॉक है ना, नाटो, इट वाज established in 1949, whereas in response to the NATO, the USSR established its eastern bloc, the Warsaw Pact, and it was established in 1955 in a response to NATO. अब जो वेस्टर्न ब्लॉक था उसके अंदर ये वाले कंट्रीज़ थे, यूएस, फ्रांस, ग्रेट ब्रिटेन, इटली, कनाडा, नीदरलैंड, वेस्ट जर्मनी, ऑल ऑफ द वेस्टर्न ब्लॉक, एंड दे हैड द कैपिटलिस्ट ideology, there was democratic form of government, and their aim was to, and their goal was to unite Germany. Whereas the Eastern Bloc consisted of the Soviet Union, Ukraine, Poland, East Germany के अंदर जितने भी फिर states थे. So it had the communist ideology. They favor the totalitarian kind of governments, and their aim was and goal was to take control of the countries behind the Iron Curtain. आयरन कर्टन के उस तरफ जितने भी कंट्रीज़ हैं उस पे हम अपना कम्युनिस्ट आइडियोलॉजी को स्प्रेड करेंगे. सो दिस वाज द अलाइंस सिस्टम, द कोल्ड वॉर अलाइंस सिस्टम. सो आई होप यू गेट दैट. समझ आ गई है आप लोगों को. This marks the end of part 3. I hope you liked the video. Please hit the like button and push the subscribe button as well. My whole channel is dedicated exclusively to the subject of political science. So I'll be continuing this series with part 4 in another lecture. Thanks for staying with me, and don't forget to subscribe. Your support means the world to me. So take care. Until then, bye.